Hello, my name is Robert O'Driscoll. I'm Ireland's Consul General here in San Francisco, and we're delighted to welcome you to this very special presentation that we are delivering in partnership with our colleagues in the Consul General of Ireland in Boston, with Science Foundation Ireland and with the Ireland America Science Forum. The topic of today's conversation is Ireland's scientific and research response to COVID-19 and transatlantic research collaboration. And I said it's very special because first of all, we partnered obviously with our colleagues on the East Coast and back in Ireland. So we are really going coast to coast and transatlantic this morning with, I just checked the registration there. We have attendees from Ireland, from America, from I think 12 states across the United States, Canada, and even one from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, my old stomping ground, from about 9 or 10 years ago. So it's an international audience. We've got an amazing panel for you. And before that, I go into that, I'm just going to say our next speaker series event takes place in 2 weeks' time, and that's with the Cork Chamber of Commerce, Enterprise Ireland, and we'll be interviewing John Goulding, the CEO of WorkVivo, and talking about the strong sister city links between San Francisco and Cork. In terms of news from home, some of you will have seen already, I'm sure reading the news, following what's going on back home, is that Ireland is going to move to phase 2 of our reopening, starting on Monday, and the government today agreed for an acceleration of that reopening process, with the next big step moving to the next phase on the 29th of June. So follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ireland NSF. Subscribe to our newsletter if you want to just keep abreast of everything that's going on around our reopening back in Ireland. So just to today's event, and as I say, we're very, very excited to deliver this event for you. But to my mind, I mean, this has been a period of huge excitement in transatlantic scientific research collaboration. I think a huge amount of credit must go to Science Foundation Ireland for the investment they've made over almost 20 years now in really improving Ireland's global rankings in terms of scientific research. I think we're 11th in the world now in terms of the impact of our scientific research, but also now increasingly in telling that story and making those international connections, which are so important to driving that excellence further. The establishment of a new office here in the Bay Area, a new person here in the Bay Area, just almost 2 years ago now, was a significant step forward in that regard. And last year, I was really proud to work with the local Science Foundation Ireland team and the guys back in Dublin on the first ever research trade mission last December. So look, lots going on, very, very exciting period, and of course, delighted to be joined by our colleagues and friends in the Ireland America Science Forum, who themselves have rebranded and brought new energy to developing those transatlantic research collaborations. So without further ado, because we're not here to listen to me this morning, we're here to listen to our amazing panel, let me introduce, we have Professor Kingston Mills from Trinity College Dublin, is my old alma mater. We also have Dr. Siobhan Roach from Science Foundation Ireland. And your conversation this morning is going to be moderated by Dr. Maura Quigley, board member of the Ireland America Science Forum. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Maura, and please get your coffee. If you're in San Francisco, enjoy your morning coffee. If you're in Boston, I think it's about lunchtime. And if you're in Ireland, it's just probably dinner time. So wherever you are, please enjoy this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Robert, for that very kind introduction. And it is indeed exciting to have this opportunity to have an event where we can bring together the scientific community across all these diverse geographical locations. So it's my pleasure today to have the chance to moderate this discussion around Ireland's response to the research response to COVID-19. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Ireland America Science Forum, and we're a volunteer-led organization that has been in operation since 2019. And our goals are really to foster opportunities for collaboration and connection between the US and the Ireland scientific research communities. And so we've been doing this, in large part in-person events to bring the scientific and enterprise communities together, largely focused in the Boston and the DC area, together with the support of the consulates there. But now this really for us is an exciting new opportunity to connect a broader community through virtual events such as this. So we're really excited today to have these wonderful panelists here to talk to us. And we're planning to have a short presentation from both Siobhan and Kingston. And during that time, I'd like to just encourage you to make use of the chat function on this Zoom. And we can take questions from our audience towards the end of our discussion. So I'd welcome you to take advantage of that. So please, Siobhan, we're ready for your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today to have an opportunity to discuss the Irish research response to COVID-19. As we know, funders around the globe have rapidly mobilised forces to support research and innovation approaches to tackling the pandemic. SFI has taken a multifaceted approach to a 5-point plan that we launched as part of the Irish Government's National Action Plan for COVID-19. The plan outlines key activities where SFI and the research community can make a positive impact. The 5 pillars of the plan are outlined here. They include collating information on national and international funding sources, ongoing research projects, and links to key scientific information to help researchers. Problem curation efforts, whereby we work with government departments and other key stakeholders to understand the most pressing problems that are relating to the COVID-19 that can be tackled through research and innovation approaches. We connect researchers and innovators, leveraging the critical expertise, capabilities and infrastructure across the system to develop innovative solutions to these problems. And the Rapid Response Call provides the funding vehicle to support the development of solutions where required. A strong collaborative engagement underpins all aspects of our response plan, and collaboration is something that as a small country, Ireland does really well. In a first for Ireland, the main research and innovation funding agencies joined forces in developing this rapid response call, the main objective of which is to support innovative projects that would have a clear impact on the crisis this year, while also supporting engagement in global efforts. It's very much a solution-focused call where researchers from different disciplines and sectors were encouraged to collaborate. And over the period of about 5 to 6 weeks, over 500 applications were received. 350 of those came to SFI alone, and this was a significant increase in submission rates. Typically in any year, SFI would process about 1,000 to 1,200 applications. So, you know, we in effect received a quarter of our yearly activity in the space of a month, so it was a tremendous response. The projects are addressing a range of research areas which are outlined here, and we have funded over 26 projects to date, and we have many more in the pipeline that we're getting ready to launch. And I suppose a couple of things to note is that many of them involve collaboration with US academics and companies, which is fantastic to see. What I'm going to do in the next few slides is to give you an example of a few of those projects that have been funded. So the first project here on the left is a national coronavirus sequencing consortium, which will tackle the genetics of coronavirus and how the sequence changes over time. And this will be a very important contributor to international efforts in understanding the virus. We also received a number of projects in the area of diagnostic testing, kind of focused on both the diagnostic testing platforms, but also on the reagents for testing, which, as we know, have been in critical short supply. So this project highlighted here, involving researchers in UCD, is aiming to develop new reagents that can be used to boost capacity in the hospital system in Ireland. We also have been funding projects in the area of PPE and medical devices, and this project here by Professor Martin O'Halloran and Professor John Laffey from the National University of Ireland in Galway is looking at developing, I suppose, innovative approaches to manufacturing non-invasive ventilation equipment. And again, kind of addressing shortages in the supply chain in terms of manufacturing this equipment, while also addressing safety concerns in terms of some of the equipment tends to result in aerosol generation, which can spread, as we know, the COVID-19 virus. This project really strongly leverages the innovative medical device ecosystem that exists in the west of Ireland. So aside from the projects that we have funded directly through the call, one of the most notable aspects of the response to the crisis has been how the Irish research community have been galvanised into action to address the problems that have arisen. And Kingston is going to talk about how the immunology community has responded, and I'm going to now focus on the SFI research centres. So these are centres that are co-funded partnerships between government, academia and industry, and they focus on multidisciplinary research in areas of strategic importance to Ireland. These include data analytics, manufacturing, pharma, medical devices, agri-food and climate. And due to the Irish government's investment in these large-scale research centres, and indeed other thematic clusters of scale in Ireland, it really made us well positioned to rapidly respond in a time of national emergency. The responses have been quite varied, and this slide here shows a number of our manufacturing centres printed face shields for use in hospital wards, as well as spare parts for medical devices. So this was 3D printing approaches. We have our data analytics centre, which developed symptom tracking approaches, also conducted genome population-wide surveys to understand the challenges that were arising due to the pandemic and the government restrictive measures that were put in place. And we had another centre who has launched an industry consultancy service to help companies navigate through the crisis, as well as developing online educational tools for our centre, for our students. So it's all been very important work. It's worth noting that a number of the centres have and other research groups have been working very closely with government departments, including in the areas of with the Health Service and the Department of Health, working on developing a contact tracing app. They have contributed to developing a national standard for barrier masks. They're also working with our Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation on addressing problems in the supply chain and helping companies as we emerge from the pandemic. So overall, we've observed an incredible mobilisation of the Irish research community to addressing the pandemic, and these efforts will continue to grow over the coming months and the year as we kind of navigate our way through the next phase of the crisis. So I'm now going to hand over to Kingston, who will talk about the immunology research that his group and his colleagues in Trinity College Dublin have been conducting. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk to everybody this morning from Ireland. It's afternoon here. I'm going to now try and share my screen with you. And I'd first of all like to thank the Consulate, the Irish American Partnership and SFI for co-hosting this. I want to tell you about what's happening in the context of immunology and the COVID-19 immunology project out of Trinity. So I am the academic director of Trinity Biomedical Sciences Institute, and Trinity Biomedical Sciences Institute is probably the biggest biomedical institute in Ireland. We have about 70 research groups, over 400 researchers. It was opened in 2011. It's a 35,000 square metre building, which was funded partly by government and partly privately. And we raise a lot of research funds, around 110 million over the last 5 years. We've 7 spin-out companies that have between them raised about 100 million in venture funds. We have 5 schools that share the building. The School of Biochemistry and Immunology is the sort of main host in the building, and then parts of medicine, all undergraduate medicine teaching goes on this building. And there are 3 teams of research: biomechanical engineering, immunology, and cancer, with a particular emphasis on the immunology of cancer. Immunology in Trinity is extremely strong. It really is world class in various ranking systems that take into consideration the size of our country and the size of our university. We rank up in the very top level, 2 in the world in some of the rankings, compared with the leading universities in the US, including Yale and Harvard, and in Europe. So on basis of citations per paper, for example, we would be up there on the top 2. And this is just a collage of number of papers published over the last few years in different areas of immunology. We're particularly strong in innate immunity, inflammation, emerging strengths in immunometabolism, infection immunity, T cells, and apoptosis and cancer immunology. And some of the key people, these are snapshots of myself, Aideen Long, which co-leads the project, and I'll come to her in a minute, Luke O'Neill, who some of you might have heard of, and a rising star, Lydia Lynch, who is a joint appointment between Trinity and Harvard University, and Luke and Lydia are leading the charge on the area of immunometabolism, the very, very exciting new area of immunology, which is bringing together biochemistry with immunology. And I have to say Trinity is probably leading the world in this area. So to tell you a bit about the COVID immunology project in Trinity, this really was an immediate response to the pandemic, both nationally and internationally. And it's very important to say we're not working in a vacuum here in Ireland. We're very much connected with the academic world on this. We got the ball rolling with a philanthropic donation of 2.4 million from Allied Irish Banks through the Trinity Foundation. We have an SFI grant in review, and that the project is being co-led by myself and Nadine Long. We're both directors of the two institutes, the Trinity Biomedical Sciences Institute and the Trinity Translational Medicine Institute, which is a translation institute on the grounds of St. James's Hospital, one of our teaching hospitals. We have 16 co-PIs on it. These are a mix of basic scientists working in TBSI, clinicians working in the hospitals, and other academics working in TTMI. We also have key international collaborations with, for instance, MIT in Boston. We have a project that had already started on sex differences in biology. And as you probably are aware, males are more badly affected by COVID-19 than females. There are more deaths in men than there are in women. And this is one of the key elements that we're investigating. We also have interactions with Harvard and another group in Boston, Moderna, which is the first company to get a vaccine into clinical trials, and they're doing a great job. And they have their phase 1 data now already and are entering phase 2. And then there are others such as Hong Kong University, various European universities, and UK, and a couple of other Irish groups, in particular the Virus Reference Lab in UCD. And so really why Trinity? And really it's leveraging the basic expertise in basic immunology combined with the expertise in clinical infectious diseases in St. James's. That was a unique cohort, and we were really ready to go on it. So what's the project about? Well, there are 4 areas really. One is all around testing. And as you probably know, every country is grappling with this, and they're still grappling with it, even though there have been significant advances made. It was slow to get going here, and there's still hiccups with the methods, mainly because the classic method, the PCR method for virus testing, is cumbersome. It requires category 3, BCL3 facilities to isolate the RNA to do the PCR. We're involved in developing a rapid type of test which doesn't require extraction of the RNA. There's a group in St. James who's doing that. We're also developing antibody tests. Lots of countries are doing this, and there are lots of rapid antibody tests on the market, but a lot of these rapid antibody tests are of dubious quality. So we believe that we don't want to rely on these tests, so we have already got our own tests. It's pretty close to being developed. About 5 or 6 hours ago, I got the first data from this, and it looks very good. So we're ready to actually roll that in now into a clinical lab to start validating it as an antibody test. And the thing about the antibody test, when people recover from infection with the SARS-CoV-2, they make an immune response during the infection, and that's manifest in antibodies. And if you take a blood sample from the person, you can measure those antibodies. And the antibodies, if they're neutralizing, are protective. And there's some discussion about that, but I think all the precedents from previous viral infections to suggest that if you have neutralizing antibodies, you're protected. So that means that anybody who's infected, has been infected and recovered, is less likely to get reinfected, and animal studies have shown that. So the second part of the testing is antibody testing, which we're already have significantly advanced. These will also be important to identify donors for convalescent serum. So one of the ways of treating COVID-19 is to transfer plasma or serum from individuals who have recovered from the infection. They will have the antibodies, and those antibodies then stop the virus replicating individuals that are already infected. So this is a method that's under clinical trials now with a few companies, US-based companies, and in China as well. And then a key part of the project is looking at the patients that have COVID-19 and those that have been exposed to the virus but didn't get disease. So during COVID-19, the severe inflammation in the lungs, and it spreads from the lungs systemically, and it can cause heart damage. And some of the patients actually die from heart failure. And there's a sex difference in this. Also, people with obesity tend to be more badly affected, and people with underlying conditions like diabetes. And it's not really understood why this is the case. It's probably down to inflammation. So inflammation is more severe in people with obesity and diabetes, and we think this is a reason. So quelling the inflammation with anti-inflammatory drugs is another way of stopping the deaths from COVID-19. And then, of course, the ultimate prize is a vaccine. And in order to get the best vaccine developed, we need to know what the mechanism of protection is. So we need to know why some people who resist infection, why they resist infection. So it's probably because they have very strong immune responses. If we can identify those immune responses, we know then what we need to induce with a vaccine. So one of those things we're doing is looking at ways of delivering the vaccine, adjuvants that can make them more potent, including nasal delivery, which we think would maybe a very important route. And then groups, including Luke O'Neill's group, are looking at anti-inflammatory therapeutics, potentially novel ways of quelling the inflammation. We already have a number of these in phase 3, not our group, but other pharmaceutical companies have these in phase 3 trials. But as of yet, there's nothing convincing that has been shown to be very effective. So there's a lot of opportunity here for designing new therapeutics that will stop the inflammation. So that's the project in a single slide. And it's a very exciting time, really. I know it's a huge crisis, but it's a crisis that we think that we can help to contribute to, both nationally and internationally, but also to position us better to deal with either a resurgence of the infection or another infection that might come along in a year or 5 years' time. So I'll thank you for that, and I'll pass you back to, I think it's Maura.
Great, thank you so much, Kingston and Siobhan. It was very impressive and very most interesting overview of what has gone on in the months of since COVID-19 has emerged. You know, it's impressive, I think, in particular, just how cutting edge the science is here, that you know, the scientific community in Ireland was able to so rapidly mobilize around this issue and create this plan, which was multi-agency and so rapidly funded and you know, leading to you know, direct impact and results for COVID-19 mitigation. I wonder if both Siobhan and Kingston, if you'd like to comment to what extent the you know, the pre-existing collaborations and scientific networks that, you know, researchers in Ireland, both at Trinity and elsewhere, had developed over the years, in particular some transatlantic collaborations, had really, you know, enabled you to rapidly mobilize and produce this really, you know, world-class scientific plan. Yeah,
I mean, I could take that. I mean, this was a key point that allowed us to get going very quickly. No good research group works in a vacuum. So every good research group already has significant collaborators. We published a paper this year that had 37 authors on it, and that had 7 institutions from 5 different countries. So this is typical of international research in this day. So when it came to the COVID-19 project, for example, the MIT collaboration is a very good example. We'd already been discussing with David Page's group in MIT in the Whitehead on a sex different project. He's an expert in sex differences. We're experts in immunology. He was keen to get into the immunology area, the sex difference of immunology. And we were working up a project which was around infection, autoimmunity, and cancer, and neuro. And suddenly when COVID-19 came along, we shifted emphasis, not completely, but immediately to COVID-19 because of the situation that we were in. So we're ready to hit the ground running on that one. And there were several other examples where researchers in Trinity already had interactions with European groups and US groups, and we were able to, again, develop those very quickly because of existing collaborations.
And I might jump in from SFI's perspective in terms of some of the large-scale investments that we've made, and particularly in terms of our research centres, where we fund a whole series of centres in a diverse range of areas. And when, I suppose, specific problems arising due to the crisis, we started to develop an understanding of them through engagement with different government departments. It was very quickly, we were very quickly able to assemble a network of the relevant people, and even the centres themselves formed a subgroup and were able to go out to their network and say, okay, if we take the example of contact tracing, where, you know, we engaged with the Department of Health and the Health Service Executive to understand what the real problems were in rolling out the app that they were developing. So we understood there were problems relating to Bluetooth technology. We funded a Future Networks and Communication Centre that had expertise in there that we were able to pull in. They had issues with developing the data analytics platform. So we had a data analytics platform that got pulled in to help support that. The software aspects of it, our software centre got pulled in, and they were, I suppose, through the collaborations that had been built up over the last couple of years through the network of centres, they were all ready to actually start working very quickly. And they're now in a stage where this app is starting to be rolled out, and they're doing some testing of the efficacy of the Bluetooth technology in kind of public spaces. So it has been, without, I suppose, that investment, it would have taken a little bit longer to identify the relevant people and have that critical mass of expertise to generate, I suppose, to solve the problems in a short time frame.
Thank you. Yes, it's really impressive. You know, and I think it's the one thing to draw on these networks of collaborators really to get the projects going, but I think, you know, the translation of the findings will continue to rely on strengthening these collaborations. And I think, you know, we really want to kind of position our scientific communities to maximize the, you know, the translation of these findings and implement them for, you know, for direct benefit in mitigating the pandemic. So that's really great to hear. You know, Kingston, I think you really highlighted very nicely just what a kind of a global player Ireland is in immunology, and how critical understanding the immunology of this novel viral infection is to coming up with, you know, new therapeutics and new vaccines. I wonder if you'd like to share a little bit with us on, you know, why Ireland kind of has this historical strength in immunology, and how, you know, we're going to be able to harness that for delivering vaccines and therapeutics around COVID.
Well, why Ireland? It really started about 25 years ago. Luke O'Neill was the first immunologist. He's really a biochemist, but he started working on IL-1 about 25 years ago. IL-1 is the first, one of the cytokines in the immunology family, if you like. And I was working in the UK at the time, and I went to Maynooth University. And my ambition always was to come back to Trinity, because I was a graduate from Trinity. And then I moved into Trinity, and there were two of us. So over the next 20 years, we built up a big network of collaborators, but also started to recruit people. We were lucky enough to have, both Luke and I were both head of departments. So we turned the biochemistry department into an immunology department effectively. I hope there are no biochemists listening, because biochemistry and immunology really, and but immunology really mushroomed, because it's such an exciting subject that so many of the students want to do. It's one of the most popular subjects of our biological sciences. So it really is very easy to inspire someone in the field of immunology, because it really is, it permeates every area of medicine now. You know, inflammation is key to heart disease, it's key to Alzheimer's, it's key to so many things. And of course, COVID-19, it's key to understanding, first of all, why people get, some people don't get it. You know, there are asymptomatic people, about 50% of people get infected and have no symptoms, and we have absolutely no idea why that is. So that is key to discovering the basis of the immune response that stops those from getting infection. We think it's immunological. The geneticists might say it's genetic, but I'm sure it's probably a combination of both. So I think immunology has a huge potential to answer the questions, not only from the vaccine perspective, but also the anti-inflammatory drugs that are, you know, some of which have been trialed. Like there's a drug that was used to treat arthritis, which wasn't terribly effective in arthritis, but it's now been repurposed for COVID-19. And it's showing some promise. It's an antibody against a cytokine called IL-6, which is an inflammatory cytokine that causes some of the problems. And it's showing, you know, some benefits, but we think some of the inflammasome inhibitors, the IL-1 inhibitors, may actually be better. And they're going to be going into trials pretty soon.
I think, you know, really thinking about all of the findings that can come out of this basic research, how quickly can be translated in the field of, you know, of COVID. You know, we're in Boston here, we're really at the kind of global hub of, you know, the concentration of life sciences. And I think, you know, anybody's really quite familiar when, they hear the terms like Moderna, all of the, Gilead, all of the, the companies that are really kind of making rapid strides towards developing vaccines and therapeutics. We think also of the community on the West Coast in San Francisco, Gilead coming forth with the data to support their Remdesivir drug. So I think, this is the exciting early stage of all of this, mitigation to COVID. But I think, maybe I'd like to direct this question to you, Siobhan. Like, Ireland has such strengths in biomanufacturing as well that I think will be key for actually translating and scaling up these findings for the production and development and distribution of vaccines and therapeutics. How would you see Ireland playing a key role in global supply of COVID therapeutics?
Absolutely. So Ireland obviously has, as you said, we have massive strengths in the area of biopharma. So we have all of the world's top 10 pharma companies have substantial operations in Ireland, and probably the majority of them collaborate with academic researchers in Ireland. Just to note that, obviously a very strong and transparent regulatory framework and history of compliance, and a very strong commitment from the government to supporting further development of biopharma manufacturing in Ireland. And I suppose just to highlight, yesterday there was an announcement by the government on a new COVID medicine production support scheme that is going to have, it's up to 200 million in state support that's targeted to companies producing COVID medicines, and to enable them to gear up their manufacturing facilities to be able to rapidly manufacture the products that get developed as a result of research. So it's really an incredible support system. Also, I suppose as an industry in Ireland, always looking ahead to where the new developments are arising, and in terms of advanced therapeutic medicinal products, that is probably the current focus on developing a national strategy in that area to ensure that Ireland remains competitive in this area.
Just what you've achieved in the space of these few months is impressive at any time, but considering, we're all under the restrictions of social distancing and everything, your teams are obviously incredibly productive under the circumstances. Would you like to share a little bit with us, how you managed to both execute lab work, produce these research plans and really, mobilize so rapidly? Scientists all over the world, I'm sure it's familiar to everybody on this call, we've all adapted to try and, be as productive in this crisis as possible. How has it been for, Trinity and SFI, and anything you'd like to share that might be relevant for the global audience?
Like all other countries, we were effectively shut down for 2 months or close to it. But one of the things that happened very quickly is that anybody working in research, it was considered a priority. So our university in Trinity allowed us to get back in, allowed our key workers to get back in earlier than anybody else effectively. So we've had people in the labs for some weeks now working on this project. And right now I'm director of the Institute, so we're formulating a plan for return to work from Monday for more general activity outside of COVID-19. That's a sort of like a 1/3 of the workforce will be going back on next week. It's been a very, 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 what word would I use, tedious process in terms of ensuring that we put in place all the measures to ensure safety of staff, and that we do it in a way. It's hard to actually describe how difficult it is to get an operation of a building where there are 400 people researching back in action. So it's going to be a phased process, but it has been technically challenging, let's put it that way. But we have some great people who have great enthusiasm. I think that's the key thing, enthusiasm to not let this obstacle get in the way of getting back to work and doing research. So that's been the key thing, is the enthusiasm of the people to want to make it work. And the university of their support staff in terms of helping us to get back to work. So that's been a huge part of the positivity around, and wanting us as well, people wanting to work on this disease because of the national and the international crisis. There's a great feeling that people, need to do something to help. And so the will to work is huge. I mean, I personally have probably never worked as hard in the last 2 months, and that has all been in front of a computer, as I have in the previous number of years. So it's been incredible from all my colleagues as well.
I suppose from SFI's perspective, just to add to what Kingston just said about, his productivity behind the computer, I suppose we're probably seeing that in the volume of applications that we're receiving at the moment, which is keeping SFI incredibly busy. But I suppose we have been working very closely with the universities, trying to get the research labs back up and running, because we recognize that it's not just the research labs themselves that need to reopen, but there's the whole support systems that sit behind the labs and all the cleaning and reagents support that needs to be considered. And through the network of centres that I suppose through our network of centres, we had identified a series of areas that the centres felt collectively that they could respond to and kind of help out with. And one of the areas was kind of early on development of protocol to support the safe reopening of labs, and this was looking at things of how you maintain social distancing, how you operate equipment within the lab, the gowning requirements depending on the facilities that you're working in, and trying to do this while still adhering to there's national guidance that has been rolled out for all workplaces. So it's not, as Kingston has outlined, it's incredibly complex, and I know that a lot of the research labs are still working through it, but this protocol effectively that they developed has helped inform some of those labs and it is happening on a phased basis within the universities. And this guide is now being rolled out as a national guide to support safe reopening of all science labs in Ireland, and has also been shared internationally through the Chief Scientific Advisors Network, including it has been shared with the Chief Scientific Advisor in the US, in Canada, and within Europe. So I suppose we like to think we're doing our part to kind of help on an international level in getting research labs back up and running.
Oh, that's really great to hear, Siobhan. Thank you. Yeah, I think, again, this is something that scientific communities are facing internationally and globally. I think, sharing of experiences and collaborating on best practices will be really key to keep, sustain this productivity around COVID. I guess it just highlights as well just how, the scientific community has, kind of been turned on its head in a way, this rapid redirection towards COVID-oriented projects and everything. But it also, provides opportunities to really solidify collaborations, I think, and find new ways of working with people. We're all, on our computers largely at home, but yet we're, connected globally now. This can have a great catalyst for collaboration, I think, that, we may continue to kind of retain moving forward, irrespective of, what the new normal becomes. But to what extent do you see this, supporting collaboration, taking more advantage of the kind of virtual way of working, and how you think this might kind of impact, take advantage really the fact that this could be, great cost savings for research. We can have a lot more kind of, shorter, projects that are happening with less resources, less travel involved potentially. Do you kind of see some of the positive effects of some of this virtual working experience?
I'll answer that one first. Maybe Siobhan might want to come in after me. I think from the travel perspective, we have learned new ways of doing it. I'm involved in the European project on another area. It's on whooping cough vaccine. And there are 20 research labs in Europe involved in it, and 2 companies. And we normally would have a meeting every 3 months where we'd fly to Amsterdam or to Berlin for a meeting. All our meetings now virtual. We don't fly, obviously. So it is more tricky, I have to say, to have meetings by Zoom than it is to sit down in a room and discuss things, but it can be done. I also have given 2 seminars to US universities in the last few weeks where I've just sat down in front of my computer. This was seminars I've been invited to give, and where I would have traveled to the US. And I sat down in front of the computer and gave it, and it worked. And with question and answers a bit like this. And also many big, research organizations, I don't mean research organizations, I mean societies, like the International Union of Immunology Societies. Instead of having an annual meeting, they're now having a meeting by Zoom. And some of these are having 3,000 and 4,000 participants in these meetings, and they're quite incredible. We're doing one from Trinity. There's a guy called David Finlay, Immunometabolism, a young PI. He organizes it, and it started off internally, and then he opened it up internationally, and now he has hundreds of participants once every 2 weeks from all around the world. So it has changed the way we do things. Just to answer your question on the money side of it, the travel budget is a very small, before Siobhan thinks she's going to slash all our budgets for SFI funding, the travel budget is a tiny proportion of the funding of any grant. So, you know, it won't make much impact on the overall budget of a research grant, but it will make it easy for us not to burn so much carbon flying off where we maybe didn't have to fly to.
Yeah, so look, I suppose everybody is finding a new way of working at the moment, and I think that the COVID crisis is certainly galvanizing people, and the international focus and the need to respond on an international basis is only going to help support that even more. So people will find different ways of engaging with collaborators internationally, and doing things virtually is becoming the new norm. Obviously, it can have its problems, such as my problems earlier in the presentation. But one of the ways we've actually, as a funding organization, had to adapt to doing things virtually is that we bring over reviewers from all over the world, and a lot of them would be from the US, and we bring them over to conduct assessments of our awards, particularly the larger scale awards. And these would be, and you know, we bring them on site within the university for, it could be 2 or 3 days, engage directly with the academic award holders. And that now can't happen. And what we've had to do is adapt that to a complete virtual platform. And I suppose 6 months ago, we were having discussions around, you know, given the carbon impact of flying people all around the world, should we be moving in this direction? And everyone was like, oh, it would be very difficult to do it. You'd lose a lot of that kind of the personal touch around it. But we've been forced to do a number of them in over the last few months. And I have to say, they have worked fantastically. Now we've had, and part of that is due to the commitment of scientists around the world. We have had some panel members from California dial in at 1 in the morning to our reviews. So that's the level of commitment that we're seeing to kind of this new way of working virtually.
I completely agree. It's disruptive, but there's great potential upsides to this. And actually, you know, within the Ireland America Science Forum, we're, you know, just seeing this as an opportunity to connect in a way that, you know, was challenging for like a volunteer-led organization to have, you know, physical in-person events. We, of course, everybody always appreciates and enjoys those, and they do create more of that personal connection, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But there's huge potential for these virtual events, and I think today's very interesting and informative discussion is just an example of that. And I want to thank you both for sharing with us the work you're doing around COVID in Ireland. So I'm going to thank you both and pass you on now to our Consul General of Ireland in Boston, Alicia Moore.
Thank you very much, Maura, and thank you very much, everyone, for a really fascinating talk. I was on a panel discussion earlier in the week, and somebody asked me, they said, with everything that's going on, do you see any silver linings in this current pandemic? And I think they are few and far between, but I think a meeting like this is one of the rare ones for all the reasons that we've all just been talking about. I mean, maybe Robert and Sanfran can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is the first event that the two consulates on either side of the US coast have hosted together, for example. And Maura, I know we've worked with you and the Ireland America Science Forum most recently for St. Bridget's Day in February. We hosted a fantastic event on women in science, and it's only February, but it seems like an awful long time ago now with everything that's happened. But it's really fantastic to be able to speak with colleagues, both here in Boston, in San Francisco and in Dublin about Ireland, the work that Ireland is doing in this area. And it's really fantastic to be able to connect with such a wide-ranging audience all at the same time. As Robert said at the outset, people on the west coast of the US, on the east coast of the US, lots of places in between, and then across the Atlantic too. So for me, this has been a really, really exciting event and collaboration, and thank you all very much. I mean, the work that a consulate does. I mean, here in the US, I mean, we're all about two things, really, promoting Ireland and then promoting that transatlantic relationship. And just reflecting on what you've all been speaking about, I think the whole area of science research, it lends itself to that extremely well. So it's just really great to have this opportunity. And I do think that organizations like Science Foundation Ireland and then the Ireland America Science Forum, I mean, they are excellent platforms to build on this going forward, because they are all about Ireland and the US and that international collaboration. So I just want to express my thanks to everybody for tuning in, to all the panelists, of course, and then also I wanted to thank Aoife Ryan of Science Foundation Ireland and Bob Morrow of the Ireland America Science Forum, because folks, they're not on your screens, but they work very, very hard to pull this event together. It's been a great opportunity to have a conversation. It's a virtual conversation, and I know that there are drawbacks, but hopefully we can continue the conversation, and then, you know, in the time ahead, the new normal, whatever that looks like, we might be able to, you know, use this as a strong foundation to continue those connections in the future. So looking forward to seeing you and hearing from you all again. And meantime, thanks for tuning in. Stay well, stay safe. Thanks and goodbye.